As John said, we're going to be looking at the way, certainly with reference to Coventry and Warwickshire, and also in Simon's particular business, how we've really taken business partnerships to a different level to help drive our economy. You can see who our panellists are. We have Nick Abel, who's actually the chairman of the leading regional law firm of the year, Nick Abel, who's also vice chair of the LEP. We have Mike Crone, who actually wasn't invited onto the panel, but he doesn't want to meet the bloke from Derby in the audience after his last presentation. I'm sure he is here, so put your hand up if you're from Derby. Les Radcliffe, former of Jaguar, but who's now chair of the Coventry and Warwickshire Champions, and will come on and explain what the Champions does and how really they've helped drive forward business engagement in our area and raise profile. And finally, Simon Reed, who's the Managing Director of Lungfish Architects. So thank you very much, gents, for joining us. Nick, if I can start with you, with your LEP hat on. You've been involved with the LEP from the start, and obviously people here know that LEPs are private sector driven. How has that helped bring Coventry and Warwickshire together, bearing in mind, folks, that we have a city council that is Labour, we have a county that is Tory, and it's fair to say, Nick, it was never the twain shall meet until the LEP formed.
I think that'd be fair to say you're right there, Adam. I mean, speaking as a lawyer, I can tell you that the best and the worst way to run any business is as a partnership. It can be the most powerful and strongest way to achieve things. It can also be incredibly destructive. But if you get the right one and it works, it really is powerful. I remember before the LEP was formed years and years ago, I was doing some work for a leading travel company. And their head office was in Leamington Spa, my business's hometown. And they relocated to Westwood Business Park, which is in Coventry City Council. And the planning went through really, really quickly, and pretty soon after they relocated, Coventry City Council were waving all the flags and saying how amazing it was that they landed so many new jobs. The fact is they just moved them about 10 miles up the road, and I said to myself, well, that really doesn't seem a great thing to celebrate. We've got less jobs in Leamington and Warwick now. And I think what's happened with the local enterprise partnership, certainly in Coventry and Warwickshire, is that it has brought together 7 local authorities who perhaps were competitive with each other before, to really work together. And I think when the penny dropped that local enterprise partnerships were here to stay, that funding was going to come through local enterprise partnerships for the development of your local economy, then everybody bought into it. And I think, personally, from some really, really good leadership in the public sector, in Coventry and Warwickshire, we've achieved a dynamic and powerful partnership. Our local enterprise partnership has a board made up of directors from each of the 7 local authorities involved, 2 directors or 1 director each from the 2 universities, which we're very lucky to have, and then an equal number of directors, if you like, on the other side from the private sector, all of whom give of their time voluntarily, and the chairman also being from the private sector. So it really is a private sector-led partnership. It drives what the locality knows it wants, and it makes sure that it speaks with one voice. And certainly being out here at MIPIM for my second visit, like Mike, I'm becoming increasingly aware of just how powerful Coventry and Warwickshire are as a partnership. Everybody speaks for each other. I think that comes across really strongly.
And I remember going to the first LEP board meeting, because it's been as much as an education for the private sector as well, hearing a private sector guy round the table say at his first meeting, well, I agree with Eric Pickles, what's the difference between a planner and a terrorist? You can negotiate with a terrorist. I remember thinking this is going to be a really harmonious, so both sets of heads, Nick, had to be banged together to an extent.
Yes, I think they did, and you know, you only got to look at the results that we've had. I mean, the statistics for Coventry and Warwickshire have been amazing. I think some statistics came out from the Office for National Statistics, was it this week, that over the last period of measurement, Warwickshire has been the most productive place in the whole UK economy. We've outstripped everywhere else. We're double the national average, 34% over, I can't remember how many years it was, 5 or 6 years, which is an extraordinary achievement. And we've won significant amounts of funding, and we've done that because we've spoken together, we've gone to government, and we've made compelling cases, and having won funding, we've used it. you know, I think that the lesson we learned very quickly was if you get allocated some funding and you sit on it, you don't get any more. Yeah. And we have not done that. We have a very intensive delivery program which we monitor very hard, and with the best will in the world, if the organisations, most of whom are actually the local authorities, don't spend the money in accordance with the timeframes they're supposed to, that funding gets pulled and reallocated. It's pretty brutal, and I think it would be fair to say some of the local authorities in our patch have learned that lesson quite hard.
Les, and just explain to people here, in tandem really with the formation of LEP in time-wise at least, what is Coventry and Warwickshire Champions, and how's that helped that linkage through with businesses that previously weren't engaged at all?
Well, with listening to Nick talking about partnerships, and really, unless partnership working across the whole area of Coventry and Warwickshire is actually actively taking place, then progress won't work. My previous role at Jaguar Land Rover before I retired was community relations, building and maintaining and sustaining partnership relationships. And businesses that do well make those kind of positive partnerships in the community. Businesses that do brilliant things work with other businesses and the local authorities in partnership. And one of the things we recognise that around Coventry and Warwickshire, if we could bring together both the public and private sector into a powerful partnership to raise the perception, the positive perceptions of Coventry and Warwickshire, then we'd have a powerful force for good. And over 5 years now, I feel we've actually achieved that. So it's over 120 businesses and local authorities that are working together for good in Coventry and Warwickshire and acting as strong ambassadors for the area. And we don't just tell ourselves the story of what is good in Coventry and Warwickshire. We go out of Coventry and Warwickshire to London, to Birmingham, and no doubt other places in the future. So it's a highly professional, strong partnership of working together for the good of the local area.
And explain, and obviously I know, but rather hear it from you, what you've been able to do is give some resource in terms of profile to things like City of Culture, where they haven't had the money to raise profile nationally.
Yes, I think the force for good is over 120 odd businesses and local authorities working together for very small amounts of money, and actually talking what is good about the area actually brings in those powerful stories which are much looked for. And we've managed to take our story out of the area. It's hit national newspapers, it's hit government, and certainly in the wider context of the Midlands, it's high profiled what is happening in Coventry and Warwickshire.
Yes, so the funding that those businesses provide to be able to, it's not a membership benefit thing, they join because they know it does good. And when City of Culture was saying, look, we've convinced the local populace that we think we've got a good bid here, but we need to raise a profile, it was those businesses that came together to pay for a PR profile that got the city and the county into the Telegraph and the Times and the Observer, and we think played a key role in landing that title. And you have bi-monthly events, and explain what they're for.
Fundamentally, the way we tell our story is to have high-class events around Coventry and Warwickshire, and it's profiling those event areas, giving them chance to talk about their good stories. And we are really, after 5 years, still in a position of strength. We have high-class speakers, and we kind of find out the people that people don't know about who come from Coventry and Warwickshire, and we have some very high-profile people across the narrative of our organisation, and that will draw in, those speakers will draw in the businesses to come and actually play their important role as acting as ambassadors to Coventry and Warwickshire to take that story out.
And that's ranged from national business leaders who have a foothold in Coventry and Warwickshire, they might live there, through to us getting a text from somebody, a champion, saying, by the way, my cousin last night won the Oscar for special effects, beating Star Wars into second place. And we had never heard of this lady, we'd never heard of her company. She was from Coventry, and she just won an Oscar. And she was there, and she was prepared to stand up and espouse the sort of values of Coventry and Warwickshire. Simon, I know all architects always work in perfect harmony both with their clients and with their planners. Explain to me, you were saying how you work so close with clients because you want the buildings to provide good, not just for the clients, but for communities.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. We have the fortune of being at the coalface with, sometimes our clients are only this tall,
Yep.
so if we're doing nursery projects, and to get under their skin and work out what kind of space they want to be in, and the amount of time they spend in an education building, it's really important for us to understand that we absolutely nail that brief. And we're talking about partnerships, and the engagement process is possibly the most important thing that we do. We pride ourselves in getting to talk about what they want to talk about much sooner than they would normally. So furniture, colour, interiors. And at the
genuinely consulting, do you consult with the children?
We do, yeah.
Is that more orderly than a staff team meeting at Lungfish on a Monday morning?
It can be. The name Lungfish strikes a chord with why have you come up with such a wacky name?
And?
Well, it's because our clients are this tall, right, and they remember the name.
Right.
So.
Is that why Right Hassle is called Right Hassle, Nick?
We like to think we gave the expression its meaning, Adam, yeah.
Okay. So, sorry, Simon, carry on. And then what about, over time, establishing partnerships or at least relationships with the authorities that you deal with? Because presumably, once you've established your credibility and that you're working for the common good, that improves the planning process.
Absolutely. The built environment, we're all part of it. We all feel it. Everything that we look at, everything that we're stood on has been thought about by someone through a partnership. We try and get away from it every weekend and go to the seaside or the nearest forest or the nearest campsite in the summer. But we sometimes forget that we're part of this built environment. And those partnerships can only truly are the success story of how we are where we are today.
And when you're at the start of that partnership, if you sit down in front of a planning authority or in front of a client, how quickly do you sense, a man of experience, that that's going to work or it's not going to work?
The greatest trick of an architect is that the clients design their own building and we just push and prod in the right direction. So it's that feeling of collaboration. We say that word far too much in this industry, but it's truly touching and feeling what is created. What the best thing we can do is just achieve those briefs and just make sure we're getting value for money out of what that pocket that we have, and we are stretched by local authority budgets. It's very, very difficult to achieve that absolute result that we're after. But again, the built environment and that partnership is, you're only as good as your last project.
Yeah. And it, the title here is about landscapes of the future. How much has that evolved in the last sort of 5-10 years, that way of working with either authorities or with clients?
Well, I think with Lungfish Architects and the client base that we've got, the best clients are repeat clients, where we've gone back and done more projects. We've been able to reduce fees. We've been able to produce a similar building that we've done before. So that automation, we talk about the design for manufacture in the industry and the automation. Buildings, we've got to get on board with the technology. And that's starting to work now with the software and the supply chains that we're working with.
Okay, thank you. Mike, from the level of investment you're making, I take it local authorities open their arms and welcome you in. But if you take the Midlands, for instance, you've got different local authorities that you have to work with, and presumably some relationships are better than others, or are they equally good?
Well, look, I'll come to that in a minute. Just first of all, I mean, in terms of interested in listening to Lungfish experience, we also on the Gaydon Triangle programme have the threat of violence. So if we change it, Bennett's our architects are over here in the audience. And if you change it, we'll kill you.
Right.
So,
there's a lot of people out here who are after your skin, aren't they, Mike? Clearly, you're not from Derby, are you? No. Okay, go on, carry on.
But honestly, the way to get a good project through is not to change it. So, but yes,
simple rule.
Simple rule.
You're getting a nod at this end of the panel, I can tell you.
In terms of local authorities, and back to an earlier point, I genuinely have witnessed a whole heap of collaboration dealing with all sorts of partners across the whole of the Midlands region, and some good examples of it. So the Whitley Technology Park has taken a huge amount of collaboration between both Coventry and Warwickshire. It's, you know, a piece of land that, you know, Coventry own, but in Warwickshire, and those councils have actively engaged together to bring it to fruition, and you know, a lot of you know, great work to, you know, get some RGF funding for the bridge that's going to connect the two sites together. So that's a great example. The you know, Warwick Manufacturing Group and the Coventry and Warwickshire LEP in partnership won the Faraday Challenge, and are going to build the we're going to build that battery you know, centre actually on that technology park, hopefully, or maybe somewhere else. I think there's a competition going on, but you know, that took a huge amount of collaboration, and really, you know, Coventry City of Culture 2021, when you look at all of the various partners that have been involved to bring that to fruition, and I genuinely think the judging panel, that was one of the things that made them pick Coventry, was the breadth and depth of partnership that went across to bring that together. And I remember I was lucky enough to take part in a House of Commons session, a little soiree for the Coventry City of Culture. Andy Street was there. He kind of gave a speech, and the West Midlands Combined Authority absolutely got behind Coventry City of Culture, and we're absolutely behind the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So you know, I think it's something that comes natural to the Midlands area, and yes, you know, we deal with lots of partners all across the region, and I've got to say that I mean, it helps when you're bringing jobs. It really does, but I kind of push it open doors all the time. But I think it's important always that you go with your story, and there's a logic behind it. You're kind of open. You lay out what it is that you're trying to do, and the help that you need. And I think when you take that approach, people respond to it.
We did have an event in Birmingham before City of Culture, and we said to Andy Street, you know, if you back us, we'll definitely back you for Commonwealth Games. And then we won City of Culture and went, no, you're all right, Andy. You're on your own. Nick, I want to ask particularly about that Faraday Challenge win, because we're up against some other cities, but that level of cooperation was actually cited by Greg Clark as one of the reasons we won. So can you explain, you know, the bid was put together by different people, and then at the end you fed upwards?
Yeah, the bid was put together by three partners, which was Coventry City Council, the Warwick Manufacturing Group, which is part of Warwick University, and Coventry Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership. And the great thing about that combination is that those were the three bodies who absolutely could deliver what the government wanted in the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre. I got it right.
Yes, it's one of these
I think
things.
That's the new name.
Yeah, it has changed its name probably since we started this seminar. It's gone.
But I think the really important point, and Mike touched on this, is, you know, we're sitting here really talking about Coventry and Warwickshire and how powerful it is. But Coventry and Warwickshire is part of the West Midlands Combined Authority, and that is working very much as a partnership. The West Midlands Combined Authority is part of Midlands UK. And, you know, you can say what you like about Derby, but frankly, I root for them if they're going for something and we're not. And I think that's really important. Somebody asked me last year about City of Culture, and they asked me what does it mean to be a Midlander? I said, well, it's quite simple. If Coventry doesn't win it, I want Stoke to. And I think that really encapsulates how powerful you can be as a sub-region and as a region. But going back to the Faraday Challenge and the Battery Centre, you know, the icing on the cake there was Andy Street lobbying for us in Parliament. You know, and there was the mayor of the Combined Authority coming from Birmingham, lobbying for Coventry and Warwickshire in that bid, and I think that was the real differentiator for us.
Can I just say, Nick talks a very, very good game there, but I know him quite well, and when West Brom are relegated and Wolves are promoted, he will not be so happy about cross-Midland cooperation, I can tell you.
And who do you support, Adam?
Anyway, moving on. Les, because Champions is different to other organisations, and we know that nationally We started to have other areas come and look at the model. So firstly, tell us about that, and secondly, what's the future for it?
When we started the champions process, and it was very much part of place management, and then place making, we only had one really town city, which is Burnley, to look at, and they were doing a tremendous job. So we took that kind of model and then brought it down into Coventry, and very quickly we identified that it could not be just Coventry. We work in partnership, hence the Coventry and Warwickshire champions. But that's not stopped us just sitting within our own borders. We've been up to see St Helens, to Knowsley, and more recently I met somebody from St Austell's and Cornwall, who are also looking at place management and looking at the model here in Coventry and Warwickshire. And we really want to spread the idea, and certainly for Midlands UK, we have a whole wealth of businesses and public sector that can work together and actually act as champions and ambassadors to take our story outside of where we currently work, and which is crucial when we're attracting business and investment, such as we are this week in MIPIM. People like to hear good stories so they feel confident and secure that they can come into our region and do business. And I think when they sit and listen to independent people working together in groups, such as the champions, they get that confidence, they get that idea, and they want to come and do business.
You've been very keen to speak to St Austell. What does the guy who's trying to set up the champions down there, what's his day job, Les?
I think he makes beer.
Yeah,
so
he runs a St Austell brewery, and all of a sudden Les has been very keen on spreading the word. Les, could it be that a champions scheme, we've talked about, Nick just touched on then, different areas such as Black Country and Solihull and Birmingham making up the West Midlands, could they each have a champions scheme that can harness that power to drive their economy?
Well, I think areas of the Midlands are already doing that in some areas. I mean, I know Wolverhampton have a champions group. But I think the key to the success of champions is how it's linked into place management. It's got to work across partnership, not within just a sector of the organisation. I think we have a model. We took our story to Birmingham. We had a tremendous turnout, and we're just in a really good position to help other businesses, other public sector areas to work together to talk up. And maybe that's through that champion model, through the place management model that is so successful in our area, and actually to draw that out across the UK Midlands.
And if other people here wanted to talk about that, they could. It's not Les's franchise, but they could come and have a word with you afterwards, Les?
Of course they can, yes.
Okay. Yeah. And Simon, how do you network across your industry and then link out to the people that you might be getting business from in your different areas?
We're in... We're still there?
Yeah.
Back. So we get involved heavily with the supply chain. So it might be a door manufacturer or a carpet supplier. And what we have to do is make sure we've got the right contact. And one of the first things that we try and do is build that specification, that shopping list, because we're so heavily driven by budgets. And we find that works the best way. It's just having that I talked about it before, meeting that brief early on, as early as you can, and not changing it.
And yeah, and as a company that, you know, it happens to be architecture, does your local area where you're based have something where you network with other businesses for the good of the patch?
We do, yeah, and there's a lot of architects at MIPIM. We're quite lucky as a business to be part of Scape Group.
Yeah.
So we do get a lot of surface area that we perhaps wouldn't normally get. It's not so much as seeing a house on the market before it hits the market type thing, but we do get to find through the supply chain the right conversation at an earlier time.
Well, you have as well, in a nice way, reassured a caricature of mine, because one year I came to MIPIM, left my shoes at home, and I got suede shoes on, and 3 people came up and said, "Are you an architect?" And I've just looked down, so it is a rule. So if you see anybody with suede shoes, just guess that they are an architect. And Mike, one problem maybe for a company as successful and iconic as yours, are you the first port of call when somebody wants some funding, wants some help? You know, and how do you, I mean, you might want to refer to your former colleague, but how do you sort of nicely say to people, look, we're being asked by 100 people to be their charity partner or their funding partner or what have you. How difficult is it to turn around and say no? And how do you differentiate between what you do support and what you don't support?
Look, yeah, we get lots of approaches, and I've got to say that, you know, that they all have got absolute value. So it is very hard to kind of, you know, make some choices. And you know, that was one of the things that Les did. And there's other people who are a lot politer at saying no than I am as a kind of purchasing person. So I don't get to do that job. But look, I think for us, it's more about working collaboratively together on projects in the local community rather than just handing over cash. And you know, it's about sort of what are the skills that we've got that we can bring to projects, and you know, working with the local community. That's where you get the best value. And actually, it's where you can engage our colleagues directly. We've got, said 36,000 people in the West Midlands, and a lot of them want to be involved in local community projects. So that's where to do it. It's not with cash.
And does business, per se, get that message over to the general public? Because business is often viewed as, you know, big bad business, but you don't see sometimes these efforts that local firms put in.
Well, look, but again, we don't do it for PR purposes. So, you know, I think some companies do. We're not bothered about that. So let's get our colleagues involved in things and do things. It's not about shouting it from the rooftops. I have to say that this whole panel hasn't gone to script. We, the three of us, we thought you were going to ask Nick a question at the start, and he was going to talk for 29 minutes.
That's because you met him before.
Look, so what happened?
I think
I might have done 3 days ago.
Yeah. Yes, you've done. We've all done it. We have all done a lot of talking, I think, at this phase.
So I think we've done very well because we weren't expecting anything.
No, well, no such thing as a free panel. Well, at least you three know each other. Paul Simon hadn't met any of you before, so thank you. Look, we're going to wrap up now. I think the message has been that partnership that we've established in our area and Simon has in his profession, in his area, really has brought leverage far more strength than it would done if we'd done it through a different model. And it's something that sort of rather organically has emerged, and is now driving our area and its economy forward. So please thank our panel. Very kind of you.